In July 1990, an expedition to Lenin Peak, one of the highest mountains in the Pamir range, turned into a nightmare. 45 seasoned climbers, including members of the Leningrad Mountaineering Club and international teams, settled at Camp 2, known as the Frying Pan, unaware of the lurking danger. The night began with snowfall like none they'd seen before, and as darkness cloaked the mountain, the ground trembled without warning. An avalanche of staggering proportions swept through, burying everything in its path within seconds. Lenin Peak, towering at 23,406 feet, is a mountain known for luring in climbers from around the world. It's said to be the easiest mountain over 23,000 feet. But don't let that fool you. This giant, first noted in 1871, earned its name in 1928, honoring Vladimir Lenin, the Russian revolutionary who led the Soviet Union. For decades, climbers from all around the Soviet bloc knew it as Lenin Peak, a name etched in their memories even after it was renamed Ibn Sina Peak in 2006 to reflect the great medieval Persian scholar. Yet, to this day, many in the post-Soviet world still call it Lenin Peak. Nestled within Tajikistan's rugged landscape, Lenin Peak stands out, not just for its height, but for the sense of history and danger that it holds. Tajikistan is the smallest Central Asian country, its terrain carved and molded by the hands of the mountains. This landlocked nation shares its borders with Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, China, and Afghanistan. The most common path up Lenin Peak is the northwest route. It's a journey that begins in Osh, Kyrgyzstan's second largest city. From there, climbers travel by vehicle for about 7 hours, through rugged terrain and winding roads, until they reach the base camp at 11,800 feet. This is where the real adventure begins. The camp has some luxuries: warm water, showers, and decent food. But those who reach it are reminded that it's just a momentary comfort before the mountain shows its true face. The route to the Advanced Base Camp, ABC, which stands at 13,800 feet, is where the mountain starts to bare its teeth. Climbers hike alongside the massive Lenin Glacier, hearing the constant groans and creaks of shifting ice below their feet. The path itself is narrow, carved into loose sliding scree. One wrong step, and the rocks underfoot could slip away, pulling a climber dangerously close to the edge of the glacier's yawning drop. The air, thin and cold, rattles against the face, reminding climbers just how far they are from solid ground. Once at ABC, life changes. The air gets colder, food becomes simple and sparse, and showers are a thing of the past. Climbers practice with their ice gear, crampons clinking as they rehearse every step they'll need for the next push. The sound of wind whipping through the camp is constant, mingled with the chatter of fellow climbers. You can sense the mix of nerves and excitement as everyone eyes the route ahead. The real challenge begins on the way to Camp 2, also known as the Frying Pan. At 17,388 feet, this spot is notorious for more than just its name. The Frying Pan is where the 1990 disaster unfolded. The summer of 1990 at Lenin Peak began as many summers did, with a gathering of climbers from across the Soviet Union and beyond. They were drawn by the thrill of adventure and the challenge of conquering one of the tallest mountains in the Pamir range. The climbers who gathered in Tajikistan that July were seasoned mountaineers. Many had already faced and overcome some of the world's tallest peaks. Among the teams were members of the Leningrad Mountaineering Club, led by Leonid Trishenenko. This club was known for its experienced climbers who had proven themselves time and time again. In all, 45 people made their way up to Camp 2, known as the Frying Pan, a mix of 23 members from the Leningrad Mountaineering Club, 6 from Czechoslovakia, 4 from Israel, 2 Swiss climbers, and 1 from Spain. They were experienced mountaineers, skilled and prepared. The Frying Pan, perched at around 17,388 feet, was a large, flat area where climbers would stop to rest on Lenin Peak. This spot earned its nickname because of the way the sunlight acted there, especially in the summer. When the sun was out, its light would bounce off the surrounding snow and ice, turning the whole area into a blinding, intense oven. Just a few minutes in, that direct sunlight could leave climbers badly sunburned, making it feel like they were frying in the sun. But as soon as the sun set, the Frying Pan became a completely different place. Temperatures would drop fast, shifting from burning hot to freezing cold. In the dead of night, the cold was fierce and bitter, with temperatures plunging dangerously low. For climbers resting here, it was an extreme environment where they'd face blistering sun by day and bone-chilling cold by night. The frying pan seemed like a safe, open area, but the intense conditions meant climbers had to be constantly on guard. On Friday, July 13th, the weather finally seemed to give the climbers a break after days of heavy snow. Spirits were high, the sky cleared just enough for everyone to believe that their chance to move forward had come. By the evening, the 45 climbers at the frying pan had set up their tents. They shared stories, prepared simple dinners, and tried to rest for the next leg of their journey. Vladimir Baliberdin, a well-known climber who had once conquered Everest, had been with the group earlier in the day. He sensed something was off and chose to descend. His friend, Boris Sidnik, stayed behind at the camp along with Boris's girlfriend, Yelena Uromena. Yelena had started to go down as well, but felt unwell and returned to Camp 2 to rest. Other climbers, like Sergei Goloptov, were descending at the same time. Sergei's feet hurt badly from ill-chosen boots, a simple mistake that would end up saving his life as he moved away from the danger. The evening before the disaster, the snowfall at Lenin Peak was relentless. It was heavy, unlike anything many of the climbers had seen before. Yet, as night approached, the weather showed signs of improvement. The climbers at Camp 2 were relieved to see the storm easing up. For most of them, the clear patch was a signal to rest and get ready for the next leg of the ascent. Tents were set up, sleeping bags unrolled, and the night grew quieter as everyone prepared for sleep. As the sky darkened that night, the climbers likely settled into their sleeping bags, tucked inside tents that offered warmth and a sense of safety. But this safety was an illusion. The frying pan, which seemed like a safe and convenient stop on the mountain, was surrounded by a steep slope. The terrain around the camp was known for its dangers, with small avalanches sometimes coming down from the slopes. Some of the climbers who had set up their tents near the traverse, a spot more exposed to these risks, were warned of the potential danger. But they were tired, and moving would have required too much effort. Most decided to stay where they were, convinced they would be safe for the night. One climber, who had found a separate tent because he needed more space, settled in with a warm drink and lay down to sleep. He didn't know that choosing a tent farther from the others would become a small but critical detail in his survival. The stillness of the night was shattered suddenly. The ground beneath the camp trembled, sending a deep rumble through the snow and ice. It was not just a small shift, it was the sound of something vast and unstoppable. An enormous mass of snow, ice, and debris broke loose from the slope above the frying pan. This wasn't an ordinary avalanche. It was a collapse of such size that it covered nearly a mile in width and half a mile in length. It hit the camp at unimaginable speed. Within moments, tents and everything inside them were swept away. The force of the avalanche was so strong that it pulled climbers from their sleep and tossed them down the mountain as if they were weightless. The heavy snow buried everything in its path, making it impossible for most to react or fight back. Alexei Korin, one of the climbers who survived, found himself flung out of his tent by the sheer force of the snow. He spun and tumbled, unable to tell up from down, his body battered by the impact. Snow pressed against him, making it hard to breathe. He fought to stay conscious, knowing that losing awareness would be deadly. The snow and ice carried him nearly 800 yards before dropping him off the edge of a glacier, where he fell roughly 80 feet and landed hard on his stomach. His body was bruised and cut, but he was alive. He managed to push himself upright, dazed and struggling to comprehend what had happened. Nearby, another climber named Miro Grozman was waist-deep in snow. He was unable to move until Korin pulled him free. The two men were in shock, their clothes torn, with no jackets or boots. The freezing night air bit at their exposed skin, making survival a race against time. They found pieces of their tent and a few sleeping mats and wrapped themselves as best they could to make it through until dawn. As morning light broke over the mountains, the devastation became clear. The frying pan, which had once held 45 climbers, was now silent and buried under a massive layer of snow. The two survivors, cold and exhausted, decided to descend. The snow was thick, and walking without proper gear was excruciating. The fog surrounding them added another layer of difficulty. It was hard to tell which way was forward. Korin used snowballs as makeshift markers to help them find their path. They moved slowly, each step heavy with the weight of fatigue and the biting cold. Grozman's energy gave out by the late afternoon. He couldn't continue, so Corin covered him with whatever warm material they had left and pressed on alone, driven by a simple, desperate desire for safety and warmth. Hours later, Corin finally encountered a rescue team that was heading up to look for survivors. The team escorted him back to the camp at 13,800 feet, where he was given medical attention. His back was covered in bruises so severe that he could barely lie down, but he was safe. The rescue mission on Lenin Peak following the 1990 avalanche was a daunting and heartbreaking task. When rescuers reached the Frying Pan, a location once known for its peaceful views and safety, they found only devastation. Snow had compacted so densely over the camp that any efforts to dig through it were nearly impossible. On that first day of searching, they managed to retrieve only 4 bodies. As they quickly realized, any additional attempts would likely be in vain, as most of the climbers were buried so deeply that it was impossible to reach them. It wasn't until the mid-2000s that a new chapter of the tragedy unfolded. Glacial melt began to reveal remains and climbing equipment buried since that fateful night. In 2007, an expedition led by Peter Chedrin, son of one of the lost climbers, recovered more remains. And over the following years, additional artifacts and bodies emerged from the ice. A memorial for the climbers who lost their lives in this disaster stands at Achik Tash Base Camp, approximately 12,000 feet above sea level, near the foot of the mountain. Here, a large stone displays the names of the 43 victims who perished in the avalanche. Situated on a hillside near the base camp, this memorial site serves as a somber reminder to climbers who pass by on their way up the mountain. Despite the tragedy, some survivors, including Alexei Corin, continued to climb. Corin's experience didn't lessen his love for mountaineering. He went on to conquer other peaks and joined multiple expeditions in memory of the lost climbers. His resilience and dedication highlighted the climber's deep connection to the mountains, even as he acknowledged that the avalanche had been unpredictable and unavoidable. Since the 1990 disaster, Lenin Peak has remained a popular destination for climbers worldwide, but the mountain continues to pose serious risks. In addition to the infamous avalanche of 1990, other incidents have claimed lives. In 1974, a group of 8 women attempting the first all-female ascent was caught in a powerful storm below the summit. Despite warnings, the women stayed together in the face of extreme winds and freezing temperatures. And tragically, they all perished from exposure, their story remembered as another example of the mountain's unforgiving nature. Today, around 15 serious incidents occur each summer on Lenin Peak, with about 1/3 proving fatal. Although it's often considered the easiest 7,000-meter mountain, this reputation has proven dangerously misleading. Unpredictable weather, frequent avalanches, crevices, and altitude sickness are common hazards. Success rates remain below 25%, and each season brings new stories of daring climbs, close calls, and, at times, tragic outcomes. In 2024, efforts to improve safety on Lenin Peak took a step forward with the launch of the Slava Topol project, named in honor of the late Vyacheslav Sheyko, a legendary guide who died on Lenin Peak in 2022. The project is a collaboration between British, American, and Kyrgyz organizations. It aims to establish medical and rescue stations along popular routes on the mountain. Experienced mountain rescue professionals from the UK and the US are working with local teams to set up medical stations, rescue equipment, and safety training programs for climbers and guides. This initiative seeks to reduce common accidents like crevasse falls and altitude sickness by promoting safe practices and conservative travel plans. While the Slava Topol project brings much-needed resources and training to the mountain, the dangers of Lenin Peak remain a reality. With unpredictable weather and the natural risks of high-altitude climbing, even well-prepared teams face serious challenges. The legacy of the 1990 disaster, along with other tragedies, serves as a sobering reminder of the peak's dangers. Today, Lenin Peak stands as both a symbol of thrilling adventure and a testament to the relentless power of nature, demanding respect from all who dare to ascend.